Jungle.
Welcome back to the Sideline Sports Show. It has been a very, 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 very long time. Can't even tell you. I think it was like 2022 since the last time we've done this, Tim. It's been a while. It has been a pretty long darn time.
It has been. Both of us have kind of been busy doing our day jobs, and that sometimes creep into our night jobs and midnight jobs. When you're in your 20s and inflation and everything the way it is, as sometimes the grind just never stops.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because you say that, and literally on Tuesday, no lie, I clocked out at 4:30 in the morning on Tuesday.
That's about the time I clock in.
So, yeah, I know. Tim was clocking in when I was clocking out on Tuesday morning. So, and then I got maybe about 90 minutes of sleep, and then my beautiful daughter wakes up, and then it's go time again to watch her during the day while my wife goes to work. So, it's just one of those things. Like, life just happens, and you don't find a lot of time. But we found time, and we are back, and it is so good to be back talking about sports and everything we love under the sun. So, Tim, let's get right to it. I don't even think
we got these beautiful backdrops, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Look, we got a clock. We got I don't even know what these are. Some little plants. There's a quote up there behind me. I have no idea what it even says.
And I've got a flower behind me, that just absolutely screams sports. So,
oh yeah. So,
until the meantime,
you would think
have a little bit of a different backdrop within the summertime, but until then, we're just going to have to live with a flower because it was hung up.
Exactly.
Between the last time we did a show, because last time we did a show, this was not here, and I'm in the same area, and I don't really have a good other area, so just going to have to kind of live with the flower for now.
That's right. Obviously, let's go ahead and talk some sports. Obviously, March Madness has taken the world by storm, Tim. And, Tim, we'll start off with your great and triumphant Furman Paladins, Tim. Yes. First round, beautiful. I mean, beautiful display of basketball. They were down. I feel like majority of the game, they battled back. They fought, they clawed, and they were able to play for a chance to win the game in that final couple of seconds. Obviously, Virginia's looking to inbound the ball. They inbound it. They get the trap. I don't understand why they just don't hold it. There's a 10-second violation if you don't get into the front court. It was under 10 seconds to go. I feel like if you just sit there and just hold the ball until they foul you, makes sense, right? Logical. But he just chunks it up. Furman comes down with it. Pivot pass over to the right side for a three. They sink it. They win against Virginia. Talk about that game for you, because obviously, I mean, you follow the Paladins a lot, and you're up in the Greenville area. So talk about that game for you guys and how overall it was just a really good, successful game.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to have the afternoon off on Thursday, so I was able to watch this one at the Casa. And it was very interesting because, again, Mike Bothwell, who was right up there for Jalen Slauson. Of course, Slauson won Player of the Year in the SoCon. Slauson had a really good game, 19 points, 10 boards, a double-double. I mean, played really, really well, added 4 assists to that as well. Overall, he played really well. What was really surprising is how rattled Mike Bothwell was. He still had 11 points, but overall only one steal. No, he didn't have an assist, didn't have a board. I mean, it's just overall, and then he ended up fouling out with around the second to last media timeout in the second half. So it was just, it was very surprising to see him kind of rattled in that way, but that is something that a Virginia team and Tony Bennett type defense can do to somebody. So it was definitely frustrating him, but a good thing for him that even though Furman found themselves down by 12 at 50-38, they were able to fight back in this one. Slauson basically put his team on his back, went on a mini run just to get him back into it, gave him a 3-point lead around the last media timeout. They couldn't quite hold that one. And then you get into that last minute, Furman goes down, Garrett Heen gets fouled, makes both free throws. And with 10 seconds left, they inbound the ball. And Clark, who is no rookie by any means. He's not a freshman. He's not an underclassman. He's like a 6-year guy. I mean, this guy he was around for what they called the best pass in Virginia history back when they won the national title in 2019. So, and then they're obviously going to call this one, they're already saying it's one of the worst passes in UVA history. And it's unfortunate that, well, like you said, he could have just held it. in the 10-second violation, I think that would have probably taken it down to about 2 seconds left. So you have to eventually get rid of it. But at that point, it's like, hey, Furman probably doesn't want to take all that time. So if you wait a couple more seconds even, Furman's probably going to foul you, and they should have. I'm surprised they didn't do it earlier, but credit to them that they were giving him a few seconds trying to trap him, say, hey, maybe he'll make a mistake. And he did. He launched it down the court. Garrett Heem was there. He was back. Tossed it to J.P. Pegues, and he fired the three. And I got to tell you, Ben, when that went in, I could feel all of Greenville shaking. I mean, there was everything going on. I almost tore both my ACLs jumping so high. Man, I hadn't done that in quite a long time. I mean, I was super pumped. It was just like, when the commentator went nuts, like, he didn't have to do that. I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? They're like, what just happened? Furman's got a chance here, and he fired it up. And when it went in, I lost my mind, man. And just like all the rest of Greenville, you see all around people that didn't even know anything about it, or never heard anything. And I kept trying to tell people, I'm like, guys, Furman's a pretty good squad, especially if you get them on the right night. They could definitely pull off an upset. And what's crazy is they didn't even play their best game in this game. In fact, they didn't play their best game in the tournament, because obviously we don't want to talk about round two. That didn't go so great yesterday, but just overall, it was a stunning upset over Virginia. It was actually the first upset of the tournament. And for a while there, Furman was number one trending topic on Twitter. So overall, it was everything that the Paladins wanted. Unfortunately, they got put in against two teams that were very stout defensively. Virginia, obviously, always being stout defensively. And then San Diego State was no slouch either. They were top 30 in terms of points per game allowed. So overall, a tough matchup for Furman. But again, they were able to pull it out against Virginia. So something that both teams, that Furman and all of Greenville will remember forever. And of course, Virginia loses another first-round game. They had that loss to UMBC that happened on the same date, mind you. March 16th is when it happened. Both times they lost to UMBC. That's the 1-16. Then they lost 2 years ago to Ohio in the 4-13 game. They weren't in the tournament last year. They were in the NIT. And then this year they lose to Furman in the 4-13 game again. So, again, I don't know which one's worse here, Virginia or Purdue. I mean, both teams absolutely losing the higher seeds, and both losing to 16 seeds as ones.
Yeah, let's talk about another game that happened in between that really, I think, busted everybody's bracket the rest of the way, and that was Princeton getting their big win. And here's the thing. Like, you think when you go into these tournaments, you don't see a lot of teams like Princeton get the coverage that they need, and you just think it's one of those games where it's like a 1-16, like 2-15. Like, those are one of those games you just don't watch out for it. But Princeton really made a statement, and they came away with a big win. Talk about Princeton and how they can succeed in these next couple weeks, especially riding off that momentum that Furman just didn't really do in that second round.
Yeah, I mean, Princeton, what was really crazy is they didn't even play that great in that game against Arizona.
Yeah, I agree.
Arizona, they were playing, they were down for a good majority of that game. And then all of a sudden they kind of turned on late, and Arizona just never really was able to turn it on, like really and truly. And it was a 1-point game at half. Princeton, and when it was 50, I believe it was 50-45, but Princeton just made a run and just ended up scoring a bunch of points to go on I think it was a 10-0 run or something like that. Got it out to 55-50. And Arizona, or excuse me, well, it was 55-50, but then Arizona just wasn't able to score. That's right. And Princeton went on a 9-0 run. That's how that ended. It was able to end that way. And it was a tough break there for Arizona. And Princeton, again, wasn't able to shoot the ball very, very effectively, but they were able to get the job done. But again, they were able to shoot the ball very effectively in round 2 against Missouri. So the fact that I saw that score yesterday, I was actually out, and I watched it. I was like, dude, this is an absolute – they're just – demolishing them. I mean, it's straight up, they were up by 15, 16 points at one point, maybe even more. But at that point, that was the largest I saw it grow to, and they were able to handle the Tigers. Again, of course, going into the game, you knew that the one Tiger was going to win. So, but overall, Princeton seems to be the dark horse this year, the team that could possibly be what St. Peter's was last year. They're going to have to go on to the Sweet 16 in order to do that. But again, a really cool story there for Princeton out of the Ivy League.
Yeah, and then we got our great friend Hunter Miller, obviously saying that FDU, the other game that we will talk, is going to win the national championship. Now, granted, I don't think I have that much faith, but Tim, obviously, really great solid performance. Yeah, really great solid performance in that first game, in that first round. Obviously, they're looking to carry that momentum in that second game as well in the round of 16. So talk about them just being able to get past that hump and being able to knock off some bigger teams ahead of them.
Right, and I'm sure you probably saw the viral clip from the FDU coach and after they won their first 4 games. That there is like, more and more I watch Purdue, the more and more I think we can beat them. And everybody just was looking at each other like,
oh, what?
It's like you were a 16 seed that didn't win your conference. Merrimack did, but since they're transitioning into D1, which is again the stupidest rule I've ever heard of.
Agreed.
If you ever win your conference tournament, you should be in the dance. But anyway, you're able to. You can't even win that. So you get a lucky break to get even into the tournament. So it's like I wouldn't be calling out the number 1 seed in Purdue, but again, Purdue doing a little choke artist. They'll get old Reggie Miller back in the day to the Knicks, just straight up choke job. I mean, again, they've lost to St. Peter's. They lost to a 13 seed. I'm blanking on the 13 seed they lost to a couple years ago, but I mean, they've lost to combined seeds of 15 and 16 of 31, like a 31 seed combined. You take the 2 seeds together, numbers 31. St. Peter's a 15 and FDU a 16. I mean, it's absolutely awful for Purdue. And again, another year in which people are so high on the Big Ten, and it comes to the big dance, and they just can't handle the pressure. And nothing about that game made sense. Fairleigh Dickinson was the shortest team in the tournament. Purdue was the tallest. What in the world? How in the world was Purdue not able to exploit that? I mean, all the time it felt like they just kind of collapsed in and forced Purdue to take shots from the outside, and just overall they just couldn't hit a shot. And you saw those guys. Even the commentators were talking about, you just look at these guys' eyes. None of them want to take a shot because they are all feeling the pressure, because that's what happens when a mid-major, a 16 seed, a 15 seed, 14 seed, whoever, as long as they stay in the game, that makes the other team, the lower seed, the better seed, just a little bit more nervous and like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be taking this shot. Maybe someone else should be taking the shot. And when you have 2 or 3 guys on the court at one time, on top of your really big, your big center down low, he's beast, by the way. And in fact, you couldn't get him the ball more. And the fact of how Fairleigh Dickinson did a great job on just containing him and not allowing him alone to beat them. I mean, it's just overall, it's very unacceptable for Purdue and overall. And it's just another choke job as well.
Yeah, and I think it was funny because immediately after the game, one of the local news anchors went into the locker room, saw that there was a hole that was punched in the whiteboard of Purdue, and said that is about the only board Purdue hit all night long.
I did see that. Yeah.
Kudos to her. I mean, she did phenomenal getting that tweet out. So kudos to her. And I want to talk about one other thing that kind of stood out, Tim. And it was by our great friend, Sea-Dog Knight. Arkansas coaches ripping his shirt off on the scores table last night and calling the Hogs fans after taking down Kansas was glorious. And I will admit, I mean, look, when you knock off teams like that, especially in a March Madness tournament, especially a team who was in the national championship last year, you got to have some celebratory moments. And this was it for Arkansas. So talk about that. And it really just Arkansas – I don't think a lot of people saw them being a team to compete against Kansas, but they did it anyways. And so they're able to move on to that next round. So talk about that game as well.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised. Again, I wasn't able to watch it. I was out, because I'll be honest with you, yesterday was my birthday, so I wasn't able to really fully hunker down in my room and watch a lot of the game stuff. But I did see that moment in that clip, and I thought, I was like, what a better way to represent Arkansas than to do something like that, rip your shirt off, and after a 1-point win over a built less Kansas, but overall still an amazing win for the Razorbacks. Another 1 seed going down. And again, it's why you always got to be reminded that the 1 seeds are never guaranteed to get to the Final Four.
Right. And so obviously March Madness continues tonight and throughout the rest of the week. Tim, who's a team that you have on your watch list right now? Who's that one team that could shock some people the rest of the way throughout this tournament?
I'm leaning towards 2 teams. I think someone like maybe like a UConn, a 4 seed, could maybe definitely be a surprise. Again, I think actually the winner of that St. Mary's UConn game that's coming up later tonight, actually tipping off in about 10 minutes or so, could be someone that could definitely make a run at this thing. I think that one of those two teams, UConn's a 4-point favorite, especially if Connecticut's able to get out of that game. I really like them. I think they're a great team. I think that the way that they play, they get it just fits their style, the brand of basketball that's very successful in the NCAA tournament. And they, after a slow start against a pretty good Iona team, they were able to come out and they inserted their will and they look completely dominant. So if they were able to get past a tough St. Mary's team, mind you, I think that they can make a run. And honestly, I can see Princeton doing exactly what St. Mary's did last year, possibly making it to the Elite Eight. So got to watch out for that. I don't think Fairleigh Dickinson is going to be much of a match against Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic's a really good team, man. I mean, they're 32-3. They're a really good team. I know we say Purdue is a really good team too, but in order for Magic to strike twice, this is going to be a very tough-minded Florida Atlantic team that's certainly not going to overlook FDU.
Yeah, I would say my team to watch moving forward is Houston. I have them winning it all. But like you said, I think one of the reasons why I say watch them is because whoever they get matched up with in this next round, they can't overlook them. And I think that's what a lot of teams have done early is like Virginia saw a little old Furman. Like, you know the story and how this little old Clemson works. You're a Clemson fan. You know how this works.
Mm-hmm.
People begin to overshadow these first-round opponents. It's like what you said with FAU. They are a 9 seed, but like you mentioned, they're 32-3. Like, there's not another 9 seed who has a record like that and has much success as they do. There's just not. And that's one of the things that you have to watch with Houston is just to make sure, hey, they may be the best non-Power 5 team, in my opinion, and they're a 1 seed. But in my opinion, they're the best non-Power 5 team in basketball. But you got to watch those teams that may creep up, like an FAU, who's an 8 seed, and you can't overshadow teams like that going in. Who's a team who you feel like has really just disappointed you in this tournament, Tim?
Absolutely. I mean, it's got to be Purdue. It's you can't. Yeah. You lose to a 16 seed as a 1. Anytime you do that, just ask Virginia. I mean, it's only the second time it's happened in history. After you believe it. It's got to be Purdue. I mean, it's obviously Arizona as well, losing to Princeton in the first round, a game in which you play a 15 seed, and the 15 seed doesn't particularly play very good, but they still somehow are able to beat you. Comes to mind of a Michigan State Middle Tennessee matchup a few years ago in the first round, a 2-15 matchup, where Middle Tennessee played okay. They played all right, but they probably didn't do enough to win. But Michigan State just really kind of floundered, especially in the end. It just kind of reminded me of something like that. It's definitely Arizona and obviously Purdue, for obvious reasons, are my 2 biggest losers.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those. I think the other one for me, and I'm trying to find it because I saw it the other day. I was watching it. Where'd it go? But yeah, I would agree with those 2 for sure. I mean, those are the 2 biggest ones, just really outside of like everybody else who's the big top. It was Memphis. That's who it was. Memphis for me, I thought was going to be one of those really strong 8 seeds coming out into this tournament, and they could make a potential run. I mean, they play in a very tough conference. Got a lot of great athletes, a lot of big size on their roster, and they fell to FAU. Now, granted, like you mentioned, FAU is a really good team, but I mean, everybody thought Memphis was that team that was going to be that 8 seed that could carry and be one of those Cinderella stories as the 8 seed. But unfortunately, they lost to FAU. And so that just goes to show FAU is going to be a very, very strong team in this tournament the rest of the way. So saying that, I think just looking at the overall picture, I think obviously Purdue is going to be the first one that comes to everybody's mind just because it's just like this. And you see these comments, and I think it's so true. Big Ten hoops are more overhyped than the best picture winner, which, I mean, he's got a point. I mean, a lot of Big Ten teams have been disappointing, not just in this tournament, but even in the women's tournament. I mean, it's on both sides. Like, obviously, the Hawkeyes beat Georgia last night, so a lot of people won't be happy about that. But, I mean, you look at the rest of the overall picture for the Big Ten, just not a lot of good basketball teams. Obviously, Michigan State, a very, very good basketball program over the years past, wasn't successful this year. I mean, and that's one of the things for the Big Ten that they're mainly known for a basketball strong, heavy school. And unfortunately,
Mhm.
this year they're just not. So it's disappointing to see the Big Ten kind of taking a fall. I mean, even the ACC's taking a fall, in my opinion, a little bit. So it's
Anytime Clemson
but
finishes third in the ACC, it definitely took a fall.
yeah, and so I'm just saying, like, it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this shakes out and shakes up. So, two other storylines I want to talk about, Tim. Obviously, what's your thoughts on UNC not even making the tournament in the first place?
I got to be careful here because I got a UNC friend that's pretty close to me, so I got to be careful with my words here. But yeah,
No, it's
anytime it's
okay, Tim. It's
obviously,
okay.
I mean, too last year. I mean, they were talking about how it's a rough year, and they finished. I think we're a 9 seed or eight or
Yeah,
9 seed. I can't remember which one exactly, but they're able to make a run all the way to the national title game, of course. But even that was probably like an 8 or 9 seed worthy. Is not a great regular season for North Carolina. So do you talk about not even making the NCAA tournament? That's an epic failure, especially when you start as AP number one. I believe it's the first team ever to do that. Start AP number one and not even make the NCAA tournament. So just an overall not a great year for the Tar Heels. And the team that, as Hubert Davis talked about, they had their chances. They just weren't very opportunistic. They weren't able to seal the deal. They weren't able to make sure that resume and that net ranking was good enough to where they could warrant just a bid into the NCAA tournament. And the fact that they were put ahead of Clemson in the first four out was a little surprising to me because while again, Clemson didn't help their case in the NIT, obviously because it kind of made the committee look smart with their loss to Morehead State. But at that point, you got to question, hey, morale's probably not that high at the same time. But it's just overall in a case with Clemson hoops, you just got to look at and go, look, your net ranking was like 61, I believe it was. What was? Yeah, you had some really good wins, 4 quad one wins. Virginia Tech was a couple net rankings away from being a quad one win as well. So it's just overall what wasn't good enough performance because you lost to Loyola, you lost to South Carolina, who, I mean, the Clemson's done that really well this year in football, baseball, and basketball. It's just a lot of different things have happened this year. Not been a great look athletic-wise against your rival, and then you lose to Boston College, which, by the way, if you don't lose to Boston College and you don't lose to Louisville, Clemson would have won the ACC regular season title.
yeah,
You get that?
agreed.
That's crazy. They've never done that in their history. And they'd have been 16-4, and they'd have been easily in the tournament. But the problem was Boston College and Louisville were the two teams that really kept Clemson out. Carolina fans will say, oh, it was us. But I'm like, even if we beat y'all in that game, at best, we get into the first four. At best. If we take care of Duke, excuse me, not Duke. If we take care of Louisville on the road, and then we take care of Boston College on the road, those are two games in which that Clemson would have been solidly in the tournament. So, you can't blame anyone else but yourselves on that one.
Yeah, and here's just a reminder to you, Tim, just because.
Yeah, you just wanted to put that up there,
Yeah,
didn't you?
yeah, I did. But here's the thing, like, and here's where Clemson, I feel like could have and should have gotten in the tournament over some of these other teams that did get in. But here's where I think the downfall lies is that I think as the committee or whoever puts the brackets together sees Clemson and the ACC as a whole is down this year. And I don't think anybody's going to deny that. And I think that's where you have to lie the competition and say, okay, is this better than a conference champion or a team that only lost, 8 games or, like that's where you had to lie those. And I think that was what was Clemson's downfall was there were so many other teams that were in that bubble that had a couple more quad one wins, had more quality wins over better opponents than Clemson did. And unfortunately, that's what bit Clemson in the end. But I will say this: there's an argument to be made that Clemson could have been in, and I think it could have gone either way, and I think everybody would have been okay. But I think at the end of the day, when the sun sets, Tim, as the sun is setting down right now, or getting close to be, I would say at the end of the day, I'm glad that Clemson did not get in after their first round loss in the NIT tournament.
Yeah.
So
All I'm saying is, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to give Mr. Bob Ritchie a call from right down the road. That's all I'm saying.
yeah, I mean, you agree, and I agree with you, but unfortunately, I don't think anybody else agrees in the Clemson athletic
The problem is,
department. So.
the only man that matters in this discussion thinks the exact opposite. So until then,
Exactly.
Clemson basketball will always be mediocre.
Exactly. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break. But before we do, last night's biggest game is obviously right here. Best game of the night last night was Team USA.
Yes.
So obviously, we're going to talk about that, but on the other side. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more from the Sideline Sports Show. Welcome back in, Sideline Sports Show. Glad to have you with us on this lovely Sunday afternoon. So, Tim, let's talk about one of the biggest games that happened last night down in Miami. As it was a beautiful night for baseball as Team USA and Venezuela was going back and forth all darn night long until the sunset. Finally, Team USA came away with the win last night. So talk about that game and overall, what did you see in Team USA? Like, what's going to be their strongest foot going forward, and what's going to be their weakness that people already see from outside looking in?
Well, I think it's very glaringly obvious, and in this case, just because of that lineup. People talk about, oh, this is one of the greatest lineups ever assembled, but then you look at the pitching staff, and you just look and you go, yeah, there's the weakness. If there's anything that's going to be a downfall of this team, is going to be the pitching. I mean, you got Adam Wainwright going tonight, obviously with his pedigree and his, historical pedigree, his resume. It's like, oh, this is great, but this is not 5-10 years ago Adam Wainwright. This is a guy that can't quite get it up to 90 miles an hour anymore. This is his last major league season coming up with the Cardinals before he retires. And you had Lance Lynn last night. He had a good first start in pool play, but last night wasn't his greatest start, but it wasn't bad. But then Bard came in and he got roughed up. I mean, he didn't last very long. So it's obviously the pitching, the bullpen is going to be a big problem. But with this lineup, especially you got Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, Schwarber. I mean, you got Alonso there on the bench. I mean, you got Goldschmidt, Arenado. You got all these guys. You got an all-star roster. So no matter what or anything or how many runs the other team scores, you're always going to be in the game. Just because with that lineup, someone's going to come through at some point. At least that's what you expect. So you just got to make sure the pitching doesn't make it too bad, and which is what happened against Mexico in pool play, why they lost that game. So, and again, it was a very impressive win. A Venezuela team that looked really good against a Dominican Republic team that everybody thought was going to be and was definitely one of the favorites to win the whole thing. Unfortunately, they didn't get out of pool play, but and then they also were able to win pretty handily against Puerto Rico as well. Again, feel bad for Edwin Diaz and that situation there. And again, a lot of people talking about, the World Baseball Classics exhibition tournament bullcrap. It's like it doesn't matter. I'm like, tell that to the people who are talking about the World Cup and soccer that played it right in the middle of the season. Now, am I going to compare those two? Not really, because the World Cup is the World Cup. It's the most watched thing in the entire planet. But at the same time, I'm talking about, could the timing of this tournament be improved a little bit? I mean, I saw someone talk about maybe putting it at the All-Star break, but at that point, you have to make the All-Star break 2 weeks. And I don't think you can do it. You couldn't keep your current format, having 2 pools in the United States, one in Chinese Taipei and one in Japan. I think you'd have to put it all in one country. And so it might be permanently in the United States, which would definitely take away fan exposure for Japan and fans in Chinese Taipei, because arguably the best atmospheres were when Japan and Chinese Taipei played in their pools or in their quarterfinals or whenever they played at home. I mean, those are some of the greatest atmospheres, especially Chinese Taipei. I wouldn't think anyone would have actually outdone the Japanese in terms of that, but the fans from Chinese Taipei outdid themselves. Unfortunately, due to tiebreakers, they were finished last, so they're going to have to requalify for the 2026 WBC, which I really hope that they do. But just in terms of hosting standpoint, I mean, that was exposure that baseball needed. I mean, like Japan's game against Korea was one of the most watched baseball games in history, just because there's so many people in Japan were tuned in. I believe it was like 48% of households in Japan were watching that game, which is insane. So that, again, that kind of exposure will have to go away, but just a lot of the timing and stuff as well for the WBC will have to be improved upon. I don't know how they'll do that. I mean, I love it. I think it's great. I wish we had more stars that were able to play, but due to insurance reasons and big league clubs, just so nervous just because obviously you have Edwin Diaz going down. You also had Jose Altuve go down last night. He's going to be out 9 to 10 weeks with a broken thumb. So the star second baseman for the Astros goes down. The star closer for the Mets goes down. That's why people are kind of worried about this in the future of the WBC. But I love it. I think Team USA going into their semifinal game against Cuba tonight, as some will say, but Cuba. It's going to be an interesting matchup as well. So I think the bats will be very fun. I think that they'll get off to a fast start as well tonight. So I think the U.S. comes away with it, and I really hope we get a USA-Japan World Baseball Classic final.
Yeah, I think that would be really good. I would say here's your problem with putting it after the All-Star break with those who are saying, hey, let's put it after the All-Star break. Mm-hmm. You're still going to get injuries no matter what. I mean, that's just prone to happen. You can't help that. And I think if you look at it at a realistic standpoint, you'd rather have somebody injured at the beginning of the year than somebody injured at the middle of the year and you're trying to fight for your division race. And I think that's where my problem lies. Because here's the thing, like, if it were, let's just say Ronald Acuna, where's wood? Knock on wood, right? Like, we don't want that to happen. But I'm just saying, let's say it's Ronald Acuna Jr. You would rather have him be injured at the beginning of the year and then potentially come back towards the end of the year than him basically missing the whole second half of the year when you're trying to fight for your division race, and especially in a tough division. And I think that's why a lot of fans are upset that, oh, well, this is why we should move it. No one really cares. Like, and the people who say that don't care got dunked on Twitter. I mean, literally just got dunked on because of how Trey Turner's home run celebration last night and the way he acted and basically showed, hey, we all do care. Like, this is why we play this. And I think that was a really good thing. But I don't know. And here's a backup statement from that Southern guy. The World Baseball Classic during the All-Star break would be the MLB's worst mistake since they named Manfred as the commissioner. And I would agree. I mean,
I would agree as well.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like, I just feel like when you put it in the middle of the season, no matter what even in the MLB season, you're going to have injuries. Injuries happen to every single team at some point in the year. Now, granted, it could be a torn ACL or it could just be a pulled hamstring. Like, or a bruised pinky or a bruised toe or some type of injury is going to happen somehow, some way. But you'd rather have it at the beginning of the year than in the middle of the year. And I think that's where that problem lies for me. Now, talking solely about Team USA, I will 1,000% agree. This pitching lineup is just horrendous. I mean,
what they could have, absolutely.
Pitching. Yeah. Like, and that's one of the things. Like, why would – and this is my question to a lot of the USA pitchers. Obviously, you're seeing the best talent come out there for all these other countries. I mean, you're seeing really not pitching-wise. Shohei Ohtani is probably the best pitching-wise that any country has. But you look at the rest, like, all these big MLB stars are going and competing for their country. Like, that's just the way it is. And I think for Team USA, to represent your country is unlike no other. You don't have a lot of tournaments like these. Like, you don't have a lot of times or a lot of chances to represent your country in an atmosphere like this. And so for them to get the opportunity to do so, I feel like that's probably one of the best. I mean, talk to any soccer star that plays in the whole United States. Their most favorite time of the year playing soccer is when they get to represent the USA during the World Cup or the World Cup qualifiers or the World Cup. Anything that has to do with the World Cup, they want to represent their country well. I mean, you look at the March lineup for the USA men's national team. I mean, they're coming in from England. They're coming in from Spain. They're coming in from all over the place just to play a couple games in March. And so that's one of the things that separates the will and the want to from soccer to baseball. And that's where my question lies with a lot of these pitchers. Why do they not want to? Oh, well, pitching's a different standpoint. because you can get injured very easier than you can if you're just in the lineup batting.
Mm-hmm.
But as Tim would say, I think it's about equal. I mean, it really is. I don't think they're going to throw you out there for, one game and then give you a day's rest and then throw you back out there like that. They're going to be very time manageable with it. They're not going to just make you get injured.
And there's a reason why there's a pitch limit. There's a pitch count they have to follow in the World Baseball Classic.
Exactly. And so I think that's one of the things for me to go around and ask these pitchers, high-end pitchers in the U.S., and say, why are you not competing in this tournament? And that's one of the things that kind of downplays the USA's roster right now is the unwillingness to see the big-time pitchers in the U.S. not compete in this World Cup Classic. This is another great example. Whether it's the Olympics or the World Cup, representing your homeland has got to be one of the greatest single honors for any athlete. And I would tend to agree. I mean, I really would. I think that if I had the chance to represent my country in something that I did, that would be an honor for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things that I don't think the pitching staff has, in their lineup. Now, granted, like you said with Adam Wainwright, dude is literally in his last year. He obviously knows he probably was not going to get invited at first until everybody else started turning it down. But when the opportunity presented itself, he wasn't going to turn it down because he wanted to represent his country one final time. I give mad respect to Adam Wainwright for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of this also has to do with the fact, Arenado talked about as well, though. I mean, I think it was Arenado. He talked about how a lot of these clubs aren't willing to let some of their big players go. They're not able to.
That's true.
Yeah, I think it's also insurance purposes as well. They're too afraid, I guess you would say, as well, to let these players go just in case they do get hurt, but also counteract. I mean, we saw Gavin Lux of the Dodgers get hurt. We saw Brandon Nimmo slide very awkwardly at second base with the Mets. I mean, injuries are going to happen whether you're in spring training or whether you're competing for the World Baseball, Classic. It's like the World Cup of baseball. Like, injuries are going to happen when you're playing sports. That's always a risk you're going to take, whether you're playing an exhibition or whether you're playing a final, whether you're playing a World Series game. Injuries are always a possibility. I mean, they're a possibility simply walking out of your house to be injured. So it's just at a certain point, it's just to me, it's just as that Southern guy points out, it's just worth it to be able to take that risk and to be able to put on the uniform that says USA, because again, there's very few great opportunities that you're going to have to be able to do that. And it's such an honor to be able to wear that on you and represent the United States in the country that you come from.
Now, I will say that it is a good thing that you get to have that until one of the letters falls off your jersey, and then there's not much you can do about it. And then it's Gra Britain. So, if a letter falls off, it's okay. It'll be fine. But, Tim, let's go ahead and talk about something else before we go. But before we do, I do want to give a shout-out to one of our great friends. It's over at section103.com. Make sure you use your 10% off code Sideline when you check out. Get all your great Georgia Tech gear before the season kicks off. It's baseball season. They got a lot of great baseball gear, too, as well. So make sure to go check them out, section103.com. All right, Tim. Obviously, one of the biggest things coming up is the NFL draft. We are just under a month away. And believe it or not, your Panthers are on the clock, Tim, as they traded DJ Moore and a million other picks to the Chicago Bears to secure the first-round pick. Let me ask you a question. I've seen surrounding rumors, Tim, and like I said, this is rumors. This is not facts. This is not from the Carolina Panthers organization. This is just rumors, right? That the Carolina Panthers are interested in taking Anthony Richardson as the number one pick in the NFL draft. So, Tim, answer me this, Tim. If the Panthers decided to take Anthony Richardson at number one, what would your reaction be to the team that you love so dear if they took Anthony Richardson at one?
Are the Falcons taking any fan applications?
Hey, we'll be glad for you to join us, buddy.
I mean, goodness
just bear
gracious.
down.
I mean, if that is what we do, did we not see what C.J. Stroud, obviously he had some of the best wide receivers in the country, but did we not see what he did against that Georgia defense that has a bunch of NFL guys all over the place, especially in the front seven? I mean, what, we're going to take a guy that barely completed half his passes in college? Like, I understand he probably didn't have the talent and stuff that C.J. Stroud had, and I understand the arm talent is there, of course, but I'd rather take the guy that's proven. I mean, did we not have this debate with Mitchell Trubisky? I mean, you're like, oh,
exactly.
The measurables are up there. He's got an arm. He's got all this stuff. It's like, but he didn't win. He was 6-6 in college. I think he was 6-7 because they lost in the bowl game as well. He played 1 year in college. He played behind a guy that never stepped foot. I think he played in the Canadian Football League. He couldn't beat that guy out. And so all of a sudden he comes 1 year and it's like, oh, he's got the measurables. He's got the height. He's got everything. He's got the arm talent, everything. So we're going to do, you know what? We're going to take him over Lamar. We're going to take him over Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson will be later. But we're going to take him over Patrick Mahomes. We're going to take him over Deshaun Watson. I mean, like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? I mean, we have guys. I mean, I'd rather have Bryce Young than Anthony Richardson. And Bryce Young can't even see over the offensive line, most likely. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, what are we doing taking a guy that wasn't a winner in college? I mean, I'm sorry. It just I don't see it. I don't understand. Like, I mean, I understand the arm talent, but the arm talent's not going to be anywhere good enough for me, especially when you didn't complete barely 50% of your passes in order to be the number 1 overall pick. Ain't no way. If that happens, there's going to be some serious problems with Carolina. But if they do that,
oh yeah,
I might seriously look and just move my fandom down to the Jacksonville Jaguars, because at least they're playing an exciting brand of football. They got, I'm saying they got 2 Clemson guys that are kicking tail right now. So I'd have to seriously think about it. And plus, obviously, Carolina Panthers are a team that in their history have never drafted a Clemson player either. So it's just like, why do I have loyalties to this team right now? Because the ownership, especially, I know Jerry Richardson dealt with a bunch of stuff when he left, but the team just hasn't been the same under David Tepper. It's just, if they were to take Anthony Richardson, I know they're putting together a very big cast of characters and coaches and stuff, very offensive minded, which is what this team needs, because I mean, defense is really good, but that's where Matt Rule really did us in, was he just loaded our defense up and just said, whatever, the offense will figure it out. And just like, that's not how you win in today's NFL. You got to be able to score something, right? You can't just rely on your defense to go out there and stop them every single time, especially not when your offense goes out there and sometimes will hand the other team points. So you got to be able to have best in your offense somewhat, and that was exactly what the Panthers didn't do. So I do like the fact that they're going out there and they're being more offensive. But man, if they go get Anthony Richardson, man, I'm tired of being hurt, and it's tired of being let down. I'm tired of all the stuff where it's just dumb decisions that just don't make any sense. I mean, a guy at Florida again wasn't that great. He showed flashes of potential, but overall, man, just a guy that wasn't really a winner in college, man. And when you got other guys that have been in big games, you got guys that have been in the CFP a couple of times or have been on the verge of it. I don't want a guy that's barely getting to bowl games. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so obviously you mentioned, I think I already know the answer, and I feel like a lot of other people do as well. But Panthers obviously do have the number 1 spot. Who do you think they will take at number 1, or who should they take at number 1? Let's put it that way.
Like I probably mentioned earlier, but I didn't say for sure. I really do think C.J. Stroud should be the way to go. The quarterback that they need to go after. That is the quarterback they need to invest in. Put pieces around him. I mean, they've already got Hayden Hurts, the tight end from Cincinnati, brought him over on a 3-year deal. Excited about that one. Definitely. I don't know where I think they have a pick again in the second round as well. I go out there and invest in a young wide receiver, because again, you're gonna have to find somehow way to replace DJ Moore as well, which I'm totally fine with them trading him. I didn't like how much we gave up, but as long as we get the quarterback of the future, it's really not going to be that big of a deal, to be honest with you. The loss of DJ Moore hurts, but again, if it means giving up your best wide receiver, who, let's be honest, I mean, he's a wide receiver 1, but with the quarterback, I mean, if you don't have a quarterback to throw him to throw it to him, what does it matter? It doesn't. So in order to give him up and quite a few draft picks, ultimately, if you hit on a QB here, it'll all be worth it. And I guarantee you, in a few years, if you hit on the QB and you're winning, no one's going to remember how much you gave up.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces as well. I would say if you'd rank the quarterback draft class, I would personally put C.J. Stroud at 1. I think there's a lot of hype surrounding Bryce Young going number 2 to the Houston Texans. And I think that's a great fit for Bryce. I really do. I think that team needs a guy that's going to bring a spark into the locker room each and every single day. He's led Alabama to a lot of success, and I think he would be a really good fit at the Texans. Obviously, you look at the rest of this draft class, Tim, you see Indian may need a quarterback. The Falcons may need a quarterback. Who knows? They look like they may ride with Desmond Ridder. But if an option comes up late in that one, they could need a quarterback.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind like a Will Levis to Atlanta, to be honest with you. I think that could be a decent fit for them. I could see that as well.
I don't agree with that.
I know.
I don't agree with that.
I'm gonna say, like, someone that can definitely a first round talent that can come in there and at least compete with Ridder as well. You may have to trade back in order to do that, in order for it to make sense. But I think that situation wouldn't be a bad one. But obviously, I think there's better ones. But I think that could be a good situation for him.
I think Will Levis to Indianapolis is a better fit.
That could make
sense. Because I feel like he fits that mold that Indianapolis has. I think unfortunately, the Falcons are a little bit too far back because then you have the Raiders who also need a quarterback as well. Mm-hmm. And at that point, they're just getting what's left over the next best quarterback. Because at that point, I mean, the Falcons need to really just focus on, hey, we got Desmond Ridder last year. We told everybody he was our guy. Let's ride with him for a season, see how it goes. Taylor Heineke, they brought him in on free agency just to see if he could mold and help shape him. But also, if Desmond doesn't work out, fill the patch with Taylor. I mean, I think that's probably the Falcons' go-to the rest of the way. We'll see how it works. I don't know how much I trust in that. But, I mean, that's just the way it is right now. And then I think one of the things – if you look at the rest of the draft class, obviously you said you'd love C.J. Stroud to go 1, Bryce Young to go 2, Will Levis would probably go 3. I think that could be an argument to be made. But who's number 4? Who do you think Las Vegas could potentially get if it all falls down? Do you think Anthony Richardson would be the next best pick?
That would be the next guy. That'd be the next domino that would fall into place, I think. I mean, with his arm talent, he might be able to fit into that mold system over there in Las Vegas. So I think at that point, I think that would be the best QB that they would probably be able to take at that point.
Okay. And then obviously you just look at the rest of free agency. What is the biggest splash that you think that you've seen in free agency so far?
Biggest splash?
Yeah. And who knows? It could be DJ Moore going to the –
Yeah, I think that's – definitely one up there. I mean, you got a lot of guys that are going, just kind of smaller deals that could definitely make an impact. I think the Hayden Hurst thing could be a very good option for the quarterback that comes in to Carolina, whoever they pick at number 1. Also, I think you got some of those. I was interested to see that the Cowboys finally departed and let go Ezekiel Elliott, but I think it was ultimately time for that one to happen. You could just tell he's lost his ability. I think Brandon Cooks going to the Cowboys was a really big help for them. Another option to help Dak Prescott out. Just overall, I think that would be good. Interesting to see that the Seahawks re-signed Geno Smith, obviously, to that big contract. They also re-signed Drew Lock as well. I don't get to be a backup or something along those lines. That was very interesting to see that they actually re-signed Drew Lock even after the year and the contract that they gave Geno Smith. So just a couple of those trade stuff or deals that happened in free agency overall. Nothing too crazy overall that has happened yet, but overall I think that there's been some low-key stuff that's really good for certain teams.
I think the biggest now I'm going to go with the biggest surprise now. I'm going to go the Bills releasing Isaiah McKenzie. I think for me, I think that was a big one. But I think for them, they just weren't finding the success that they hoped with Isaiah.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I think the best fit for him, and I'm not saying this because he's from Georgia, I'm saying the Atlanta Falcons because they need wide receiver depth. And he provides that veteran talent that the Falcons just do not have, like, whatsoever. And I think he would bring a lot. He's a speedy guy. You can use him on punt returns. I know a lot of people are like, oh, no, leave Cordell Patterson there at punt returns and kick return. But we're getting to the point where Cordell Patterson's, like, getting old enough. I think he's, like, 34 going into this year. There's no way he's taking punt returns and kick returns still back to the house after this year.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the speed that most guys would have. I think a small splash move that I did like was the Bucs sending Shaq Mason, their offensive lineman, over to the Texans. That adds a very good presence to the Texans' offensive line. And I think that's a really, really good pickup for the Texans to have, especially getting a guy like Bryce Young or even C.J. Stroud, whoever they get at quarterback, to come in and really, truly develop and not get sacked 100 times. And I think that was really good for them to capitalize on that offensive line, just to go ahead and, just capitalize on that. Obviously, I would say biggest splash for me, it's kind of tough because there's not like this biggest one. I think the biggest re-sign is Darius Slay back to the Eagles. There was rumors of him leaving, wanting out, and then they came to some type of agreement where they were like, hey, we'll keep you around. I think probably the biggest re-sign that is in this whole entire just because of how important he was to that Eagles.
I guess. Yeah, that sounds about right. And you mentioned the Buccaneers. Who do you think wins that job, by the way? Because obviously Baker Mayfield's going to Tampa, going back into the same division that he was a year ago when he started the year, obviously Panthers, but he's with the Bucs. Who do you think wins that job between Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask?
Well, here's the thing. Kyle Trask, I'll say this. I'll go ahead and say this, and you can mark it down if you want. But I think Kyle Trask showed more at Florida than Anthony Richardson did at Florida. Like, that's 1,000% in my opinion. Like, I would stand by that all day long. Kyle Trask at least led his team to an SEC championship game. Now, granted, did he win it? No. But, I mean, they were on the verge of, in a shootout and competed with Alabama that year. Now, saying that, he hadn't really played much because Tom Brady's really just been at the head of the position, and no one's ever going to take Tom Brady out of a game. Like, you're just not. Even if he literally went 0 for like 20 in his first 20 attempts passing, you'd still leave him in there. Like that, just because he's Tom Brady. And I think that's one of the biggest things that you look at. Now, granted, Kyle Trask, like I said, has not had much NFL experience. It didn't work out for Baker at the Panthers, but somehow, some way, towards the end of the year, it started working out for him with the Rams. That's why I thought they were going to re-sign him and start maybe trying to build around that. But they're not going to. They shipped him off to the Buccaneers. And I would say this. I think probably to start the year, the safest option is to let Baker start. Mm-hmm. And then if Kyle Trask is able to compete and Baker has this big downfall, then you put Kyle Trask in. But other than that, I wouldn't put Trask in just because he doesn't have a lot of reps at quarterback in the NFL environment. So I think that's the biggest thing that you look at going forward if you're a Buccaneers fan. You want somebody that's going to help you win and that has experience within the NFL. So that's one of the biggest things for me. Now, I will say this. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but the Rams have also considered letting go Matthew Stafford.
I did.
What do you think they do? What do you think they do at QB?
Maybe they try to go after someone in the free agency. Maybe they're in total rebuild mode. I'm not particularly sure what they could possibly do. I mean, maybe they could trade up. Maybe they can take someone kind of in the later, maybe the middle rounds, and maybe try to work on investment and development of a guy in the middle rounds. I don't know what they do. I mean, again, Matthew Stafford is getting older. Interesting to see what they do there, but yeah, I don't really know. It doesn't seem like the the Rams have a plan which they want to make public. They will sound like they want to kind of keep this under wraps, whatever it is they want to do, just like any team around us, especially with the draft about a month away. You definitely want to try to keep their plans hush-hush. But, yeah, it's interesting. But without Matthew Stafford, I can tell you don't want John Wolford to be your starting quarterback. That's for sure. It's him, but he was the main reason and biggest reason why you lost Cooper Kupp last year to a season-ending injury as well. So it'd be interesting to see what they do there at the quarterback position.
And then finally, last one, Jalen Ramsey returns to Florida to play for the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
It looks very interesting for things going down there in Miami.
Yes,
Obviously, they're getting to it, trying to heal back up. But now they got a lot of weapons both on offense and defense to compete and make a really good run. Could they potentially do that, or will it be another disappointing year? And you can't really blame it due to injuries. You have a lot of talent. You can't say, oh, it's injuries. Because, I mean, that's one of the worst excuses I hear, because then it's next man up. And it's the NFL. You make it to the NFL for a reason.
Yeah.
A lot of talented guys. So what do you think of the Dolphins and how they'll do this year, especially still in a really tough division too?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Just about every team nearly made the playoffs in that division this past year. Again, it's all going to be about health of the quarterback for them. It's the same with that. I mean, they've got weapons. Their defense is really, really stout. Can that quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, stay healthy? Because Teddy Bridgewater, Skylar Thompson, all those guys, I mean, they're nothing more than kind of honestly very poor game managers. That's all they really are. I mean, again, if they have a good quarterback, they win that game against Buffalo in the playoffs in the wild card last year. They had a few defensive scores, they had a defensive score and then had another score aided by their defense. So if they had a good quarterback and Tua's in that game and he's healthy, I think they win that game, and I think they win it probably by a touchdown or maybe even two. I mean, they were playing really well with the exception of the quarterback. Skylar Thompson he threw so many incomplete passes. He hit on a couple big passes, but he was able to keep him in the game as long as he did, but he just wasn't able to get the job done. Tua's in there. I think they get that job done. I mean, you got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, those guys coming at you. I mean, goodness gracious, that is a very talented offense that they have down there in Miami. And then you had Jalen Ramsey, who's getting older, but still he's very, very talented corner. And just making a strong defense even stronger. I think this is the year that they definitely need to get things going, get things done. And definitely, I think this team definitely shouldn't be a 7 seed come playoff time, and they should definitely be challenging the Bills for the AFC East.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Tim, real quick before we go, final thought of one thing that I saw this week on Twitter. Now, it's like I said, it's not confirmed. It's not the 100% yet. But did you see the leak of the Atlanta Braves City Connect jerseys potentially?
I think I looked at it, but it was kind of like a graze, and I didn't think much about it. So I didn't really look into it.
So I will send this to you. Now, if you haven't seen it, go just look up City Connect on Twitter, Atlanta Braves City Connect. And here's the thing. I will say this. And if you want to, you can go to my Twitter, which is right there listed below me, and just scroll down. You'll be able to find it. There's a couple of retweets there before. But I have a Simpsons meme. But let's go ahead and send this to Tim, and I'll let Tim look at this. We should have got it up on the screen for you guys to see, but we didn't. But you look at this, and it's just poorly done, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of it, Tim. I'm not.
I mean, they have the cool design of the jerseys of the throwback, but just overall, I definitely think that the front of the jersey could be better for sure. I think you could maybe have the Braves logo over that with the same color scheme. I think that would look good, but just to I feel like just to check of the Nike check on the right side of the jersey, as you get a look on Ben's screen. I just think I don't know. It's okay. I wouldn't say it's horrendous, but I think they could have done better. I'll just say that.
Now, granted, this is somebody at the Atlanta Nike store. Now, granted, like I said, this is not 1,000%, but my thing is this. Like, you go back, this is literally like the throwback uniforms that the Braves wore last year, just without the word Braves, and it just has the A. just right there. That's literally all it is because the back is the same. The numbers are the same. I think when you think of a City Connect jersey, and this is why I like teams like the San Diego, the Padres, or the Giants, or they have something that models the city and not just one individual. Obviously, if you saw in the little tag collar right there, it had 715 or 755. That's Hank Aaron hitting his 755th home run. Like, they're honoring Hank Aaron. Cool. But I'm not trying to be rude in any way, form, or fashion. Nothing against Hank Aaron, but it's not anything to do with the city of Atlanta. And that's like, for crying out loud, if you really just want to do something boring and plain, put a freaking Waffle House logo with Atlanta Braves. Like, do something like that because that models the city of Atlanta. Like, put some waffles on the side, like a waffle maker looking shape on the sides, on the sleeves. Like, make it something. Make it a peach color in honor of the peach state. Like, what similar to what the Hawks did.
Mm-hmm.
But a City Connect jersey does not reflect that, and that I think that's a poor job by Nike. Poor job by the Braves, even officiating and saying, "Yeah, that's it." Like, I just. It's not a jersey I would go out there and say, yeah, I'm paying $110 for. Like, unfortunately. And that's what's sad about it because I really just wanted something that embodied the city of Atlanta. And it doesn't do that, unfortunately. So, Tim, what are your thoughts now after seeing it?
I mean, they're okay. I don't know. I'm just like I said, I think they could definitely do better on it. I don't fully know that. Like those things are just. I like the Braves logo across the front, man. Give me something across the front. I'll take that, but I don't know. Overall,
don't leave it just white.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even if there was like a number or something, like it literally just says the A, and then there's nothing else like at all except the Nike swoosh. And so, I mean, it's just bland, it's plain, and it's not really good looking. So, unfortunately, that could potentially be the Atlanta Braves City Connect jerseys. Hopefully not, but we'll find out just in a couple months before opening day gets started in just a few weeks. Tim, any final thoughts from you? Obviously, great to see you again.
Yes, it is. It's been a minute since we've been able to talk face to face. We've been texting a few times, but hadn't really seen each other face to face in a good while. I think probably North Greenville, like their second to last home game. I think last time I saw him in person.
Yeah,
maybe even a little after that.
November.
It's been a minute. So it's funny though. I finally got my paycheck from the football aspect of work I did.
I've yet to do so because I've not been up in Greenville that much. So, but man, they take care of us up there in Greenville. They gave us Chick-fil-A. I think the best thing about doing that was Chick-fil-A every single game.
Yeah.
Or Dunkin' Donuts, one of the two. They had us ready to rock and ready to roll.
We had to walk around the building to get to that side of the building, but we couldn't walk through the middle.
That's true.
But at least gave us food.
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Sideline Sports Show. Make sure to follow us on our social media platforms at the Sideline Sports Show and at SP Show on Twitter. And make sure to do all of that and more to keep up with our content that we'll be posting as we move forward, hopefully as the show continues rolling on. I'm Benjamin London alongside Timothy Holcomb. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you right here next time on the Sideline Sports Show.